Is everybody can hear me all right? We're going to get started. Welcome to the Miller State Park Utility Upgrade Project. Good evening, everyone. Tonight we have several speakers who will outline the timeline for construction and will address how this work will affect visitor experience at Miller State Park. This public session will run until 7 p.m. The agenda for tonight will include a welcome from the Commissioner of New Hampshire Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, the project stakeholder collaboration, project overview, considerations, and outreach. And we'll wrap everything up with a Q&A along with resources and contact information. We ask that you reserve your questions for the end of the presentation and use the raise your hand feature in Teams, which can be found in the upper right of your screen as a smiley face with a yellow hand. There's also 3 dots next to that where you can click on that if you decide to use closed captions. You can ask questions during the session via the chat feature on Microsoft Teams, which can be found on the far left side column. We'll try to answer these questions as the session proceeds. You can also email questions tonight and throughout the project to New Hampshire State Parks email at nhparks@dncr.nh.gov. We'll have this contact information posted again on the last slide at the end of this presentation. It is now my pleasure to introduce the Commissioner of New Hampshire Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, Sarah Stewart.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining us this evening. I'm Sarah Stewart, and I serve as the Commissioner of the New Hampshire Department of Natural and Cultural Resources. We're home to 5 amazing divisions: the Division of Parks and Recreation, the Division of Forests and Lands, the Division of Historical Resources, the State Library, and the New Hampshire State Council on the Arts. Our mission is to protect, preserve, promote, and manage the state's natural and cultural resources, supporting New Hampshire's high quality of life and strengthening the experiences of our residents and guests. I'd like to take a moment to thank a few members of the DNCR team for their thoughtful engagement on this project. First, a big thank you to Tracy Bovair of the Division of Forests and Lands. Tracy has been the lead point person for this agency, coordinating information, paperwork, and keeping us all on schedule. I'd also like to thank Tom Mansfield, who is our agency's architect and helps us develop creative solutions to strike the proper balance between outdoor recreation and conservation. And as you might know, Tom is also a resident of Peterborough. Tara Blaney is our South Region Supervisor for State Parks and provides the operational perspective incorporated into our approach and management of a project like this, one at such a popular outdoor destination. And I want to extend a thank you to the former Division of Forests and Lands Director, Brad Simpkins. Brad was early on in this project. He recognized that this was something special, and as soon as I was sworn in as commissioner in 2018, brought me to this site and walked me up and down the mountain just to get me on board and caught up on the project thus far. So this slide shows you some pictures of the existing conditions which define our project need. It was on the first visit that I had in 2018 that I met the folks from Eversource and several of the local stakeholders as we trudged through the forest, considering where we might be able to move power lines in order to get them out of sight. The original purpose of this project was to make improvements to the existing lines and conduits, as you can see pictured here, to further ensure safety. By the end of that walkabout, there was a clear shift in our collective approach. The project went from we need to fix what is broken to we have an opportunity to not only improve the safety of our park, but we can also improve the overall state park experience, and we can accomplish this with trust and collaboration. I'm very appreciative of this Eversource team. It's their commitment to support our mission that really made this shift of focus possible. So if we consider the state and Eversource as 2 legs of the stool, it's the stakeholder collaboration that serves as the critical 3rd leg. As you can see on this slide, we welcomed and solicited feedback from other state agencies, other telecom companies, municipalities, nonprofits, and members of the public. There's a lot to cover this evening, so I'm going to turn it over to David Baum, who represents a proactive and engaging group of local stakeholders. These folks have invested much time and care into the planning process, and I assure you will continue to be engaged as we transition to the construction phase. I value their participation, dedication, and passion, and know that the future of Miller State Park shines brighter because of their efforts. David, the floor is yours.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. This is an opening reminder of something my grandmother told me when I was very little. She used to say, Menschen tracht und Gott lacht. Man or people plan and then God laughs. So it's just a reminder for us to stay flexible and open during this process. So I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, and we really appreciate your attendance. I want to start first by introducing the stakeholder team from our community. We have Greg Connolly, Francie von Mertens, John Kiley, Katrina Lours, Amy Myers, and our state representative, Peter Leishman, a man who threatened to chain himself to the gate if this went badly. He gets my vote next time around for sure. And the mountain is a place many of us have been hiking for 25 years or more, and we are excited about the possibilities. I also want to thank the Friends of WAPAC, some of whom are here tonight, for their flexibility and help in working through some of the issues we faced. We always felt your support and could not have done it without you. And what you are going to hear this evening represents, or what you're starting to hear, over 3.5 years of hard work. I wanted to start our part by reminding you what was at stake and why so many people worked so hard to preserve and protect this first New Hampshire State Park, which we've all come to love. It's essentially just 1 minute of slides to remind you of our why. So if we would start the slideshow, please. Thank you. It would be fair to say that when we came into this process, we were suspect of Eversource and frustrated with the state. And I'm sure we were a pain in everyone's side across the board. But what occurred over almost 4 years of working together is a strong and powerful partnership between all the players based in deep listening and respect, the root of which, by the way, for those who are in etymology, means to look again, which is what we all did. First under former Director of Forests and Lands Division, Brad Simpkins, and then Commissioner Sarah Stewart from the state, and Joe Purrington and Karen Mackey from Eversource. We have something positive and we think very exciting that you are going to be hearing through this evening. When we first started this process as a stakeholder community group, we had a simple 3-part strategy. 1, stop the project on its current trajectory. 2, get a seat at the table. And 3, offer what we could to at least mitigate the damage that we envisioned. What occurred through time, grit, patience, and conversation was a growing vision to see beyond the idea of keeping it from just getting worse to instead asking, as Sarah said earlier, a very audacious question. Could we in fact make the park better? Commissioner Stewart and Joe Purrington, the leadership voices from their end, really got what this place meant to our community and have gone all in doing what we believe is the right thing. So here's the good news. Along the road, we're taking poles out, burying lines at the top, moving lines into the woods where they won't be seen or felt, and creating a beautification program for the buildings and fencing. It will look like a state park. It will also solve the problems that initially brought this issue forward, which were potential safety concerns with the current condition of the existing electric and communication systems. And here's the bad news. For between 2 to 3 months, it's going to be messy, loud, and a construction site. You'll hear tonight, as you're hearing, how Eversource will try and manage these challenges, but let's be clear, it's going to be a hot mess for a little while. What we want you to remember is when you hear loud construction going on, think long view and hear instead what we do, music to our ears. The natural world always takes a while to recover, and it will happen here too. But before we know it, and with some generous plantings by Eversource, and here I'd like to give a shout out to head arborist for Eversource, Bob Allen, we should in a year or so be well beyond having just mitigated a construction project. We will have done something I don't think any of us thought was possible when we first started this, which we will have improved the park. By improvement, I mean better infrastructure and a much better park experience. How much better, we will leave it to you to decide in time, but I believe somewhere between 25 to 30% improvement of the experience, and that's a conservative estimate. You should also know our role and job as community stakeholders is not done. At a minimum, Greg Connolly and I will be up there many times every week, and we will have a direct link to Commissioner Stewart and Eversource. When we first started the negotiations, at a tense meeting with all the many groups around a table, Randy Nepper from the PUC, after hearing our pleas, said, "I get it. This is sacred ground. We will be your eyes and ears to make sure it goes as well as possible. We will always respond to you directly if you have any questions or concerns. And we will always continue to see this park the way Randy described it, as sacred." Finally, everyone on our team wants to express our gratitude to all of you here from the community tonight and to the many people who for years have supported us in this effort. We felt your support and how important this was to you as well, and it really kept us going. So that concludes my piece. I don't know, given the order, who comes next, but those are our comments, and thank you again.
Okay, so now we're to this Eversource section of the presentation. I'd like to introduce Karen Mackey, representative for Eversource. Karen, it's all yours.
Thank you, Brent. Good evening, everyone. I'm Karen Mackey. I'm an engineer at Eversource, and I've been part of this project team since the beginning. And as you can see on this slide, and many of you are already aware, this project started back in 2017. You've heard about the collaboration that's taken place over the last 4 years from Commissioner Stewart. You'll hear more from David Baum later on. But Eversource has worked very hard to resolve the safety concerns present in the park and to design a solution very carefully. And that was done through that collaborative process. The working group presented a final solution for the utility corridor to you at the second public information session that was held in October 2019. And a collaborative design for the summit was achieved shortly after. Since then, Eversource has completed the detailed designs, developed construction plans, and we're finalizing the permitting that's required for the project. This Miller State Park rebuild project would not have reached this point where we're nearly ready for construction without the dedicated efforts and knowledge of so many people. And I'd like to recognize and thank just a few of our Eversource folks tonight. Kevin Chamberlain, Julie Walsh, Tom Davis, Jen Cottaspati, Bob Allen, Ian Farley, and Joe Purington. And there are so many others that have played important roles too. If I tried to name all of you, I would certainly forget someone. Next, you'll hear about the final design and the construction process so that you'll understand what to expect during construction, and hopefully after the construction's complete, you'll appreciate the benefits as much as we do. Tom Davis manages Eversource's team that maintains and builds lines and utility corridors, and he's here to share the good news. Tom.
All right, thanks, Karen. Once Brent gets back, we'll advance the slides and move on. There we are. All right, thanks, Brent. Good evening, everyone. So we're going to start with a project overview, and hopefully you can see this this map on your screens. The project overview and the map there in the middle of the screen depicts Miller State Park. And if we start at the bottom of the map, you'll see Route 101 crossing in white at the very bottom of the map with the parking area depicted, as well as the auto road going up the mountain in white, all the way to the summit. Also, you'll see the blue line, and starting at 101, from 101 up to the yellow circle, that's referred to as the existing utility corridor. That's where we currently have poles and wires today. And then from that yellow circle to the west of the auto road in blue to the summit is the new utility corridor. And then at the summit, this call out box with a little bit more detail shows you at a high level where the electric services will be delivered to. And in orange, those areas will be put underground, which will greatly enhance the visitor experience on the summit. Next slide, Brent. All right. So construction will be completed in 3 sections, starting with the summit, which begins at the second building on the left as you go up the auto road. Trenching and conduit will be installed across the auto road to private property and also to the summit. An overhead utility line will be installed off-road on some of that private property, mostly out of sight, and will serve more private property on there. Concurrently, as that summit work is going on, work will be occurring in the new utility corridor, which again, from the map before, starts approximately halfway to the summit and goes to the summit. In that corridor, we will install new poles and wire, and that's the section that will replace the non-compliant above-ground conduit system. The existing utility corridor, which begins at the parking lot, poles and wire will be removed and new poles and wire will be installed in this section of line. Next slide, please. Just to recap some of the work that's been done to date, which if you've been to the park, you've seen some of this. In the existing utility corridor from the parking area to the first building on the left as you go up the auto road, tree trimming took place back in April of last year to allow construction to take place in that section of line. Additionally, crews built the new 20-foot utility corridor from the first building on the left to the summit. They also identified and marked out equipment access points from the auto road to the utility corridor. Next slide, please. Underground line construction. So at the summit, Eversource will be excavating and installing 200 feet of trench with conduits and other equipment to support the electrical needs at the summit. Concurrently, DNCR will be installing 180 feet of trench to install conduits to support the electrical and communication needs of the state. This process includes hammering through the ledge to achieve the required trench depth, and this type of excavation is quite loud and will be continuous until all the trench routes are installed. During this period of time, Eversource will work with local emergency officials to ensure that access is available to the summit in case of an emergency. Next slide. Overhead line construction. Overhead line construction will take place in the existing and new utility corridors. There'll be a total of 29 new wood poles and 4 new steel poles installed using specialized equipment to drill the holes in the rock and set the poles. The old poles and wires will be removed. Generators will be installed at 2 locations adjacent to the auto road to provide power during temporary shutdowns while the line is being constructed. Next slide, please. Timeline. When are we going to be there? The answer is it's really weather permitting. We have targeted April 5th to begin staging equipment in the parking lot with an anticipated start date of April 15th. But again, as we all know, and from those wonderful pictures in David's slideshow, the mountain receives some pretty interesting weather, and it can be pretty extreme up there. So that's going to be a big determinator on when we can start our work. The auto road will be closed to pedestrian and vehicular traffic between April 15th and May 27th. There'll be no construction on weekends, and all the project sections will be active simultaneously for efficiency to try to get this job done as quickly and safely as possible. On May 28th, the auto road will reopen, and if after that time temporary road closures are needed, pedestrians will be able to access the summit via a temporary trail that bypasses the summit construction and connects right to the Marion Davis Trail. We anticipate construction to be complete by July 15th, and that marks the completion of Eversource construction and DNCR construction work. The impacted areas will be restored after construction, and after July 15th, there'll be some additional work by the communication companies that they need to do to their facilities. Next slide, please. So what to expect? First off, safety. It's paramount for everybody to enjoy the mountain safely. We're going to have a lot of equipment, vehicles, people, materials in multiple areas throughout the park during this process. The utility corridor along the auto road and the dedicated staging area in the parking lot will be pretty busy places. For safety reasons, please do not approach the work crews, get their attention, and have them approach you if you need to discuss something with them. And know before you go. Please review the posted road and trail closures at the park and on the Eversource website. This construction is going to generate quite a bit of noise, especially when drilling holes and when trenching. And there may be a temporary closure of the Wapak Trail only when we pull the wire in, which is only for a few hours at a time. Next slide. So this slide gives you an idea what to expect for underground utility construction. On the left, you see an excavated trench with conduits installed, and on the right, you see an excavated trench with conduits installed transitioning to a pole. Next slide. Construction outreach. There's going to be project information and maps posted at the park. There's also a dedicated project hotline for any questions, and that poster that you see in the picture will be prominently displayed throughout the park and on trails. There is also an email address if people would prefer to email. Construction updates will be posted on the New Hampshire Parks and the Eversource websites. Interested parties can sign up for regular project updates via email, and Eversource outreach personnel will be on site during construction in case there's any questions or concerns. Next slide, please.
Brent, this is Sarah Stewart. I just wanted to conclude the presentation section of tonight's information session by thanking David Baum and thanking Team Eversource for their detailed presentation. I hope tonight's presentation leaves you feeling confident that we're executing a very well thought out plan and that it's our collective goal to ensure that Miller State Park will provide a wonderful park experience for generations to come. Brent, I will turn it over to you to facilitate the Q&A, assuming anybody has questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm going to start out with Alan Zeller. And we can all hear you.
Oh, you can hear me now? Okay, good. I actually didn't have so much of a question, is that I have been following this project since its inception, and I just want to congratulate all the principal in this project to come together, because when it was first disclosed, it had everybody's hair standing on the back of their neck, because it was going to be a disaster in terms of that walkable road. It was going to be wires and poles everywhere, and And thankfully, we all came to a consensus that that was not going to work. So I want to just thank everybody for their patience and their cooperation. That's all.
Thank you, Alan. And like David had mentioned, he sort of summed it up. What we're going to have in the end is truly some great improvements to Miller State Park. So we're all looking forward to seeing the end project. Jamie Edwards.
A real quick question. During the time that the auto road will be closed for the construction, will the trails on the mountain be accessible, or will they be interrupted in any way?
Thank you for that question. This is Sarah Stewart, Commissioner of the Department. I will let Tara elaborate, but it's our plan to have the Marion Davis Trail open the entire time. And the Wapak Trail will be open with an exception for perhaps a couple of days that we need to close it when we're working on some trenching. Tara, do you want to elaborate?
Hi, yeah, this is Tara Blaney. Everything Sarah said is correct. The Marion Davis will be open the entire time, and the Wapak will be open except for those days where it has to be closed. So the hiking trails will be accessible to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. And thank you for your question, Jamie. Does anybody else have any questions they'd like to ask? And again, along those lines, as far as trails opening and closing, we'll have those listed on the website and putting out notices on social media. So all of you, I invite you to follow us on Facebook, New Hampshire State Parks. We're also on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you, David Baum, for all those terrific pictures of Miller State Park. Great collection there. We had 27 beautiful photos. It's just going to be better after all this construction is all done and everything's back to normal. We're going to have a great year.
Well, Brent, I think with the help of Eversource putting together the details and the slides, I think we can call this public information session a wrap, knowing that we'll continue to provide information on site and on our website. Again, don't hesitate to reach out to us. And I hope you all enjoy a safe transition to spring and get outside and enjoy New Hampshire's great outdoors.